We hope that you find this a very beneficial experience today, and that we hope that it helps you craft even better proposals in the future to submit to us, and not just to submit to us, but to submit in general. So we hope that there's some cross-pollination going on there. I do have one housekeeping item for you. In the unlikely event that we do have some kind of an emergency situation, please proceed out the nearest exit and stage in the parking lot just to the south of the big flagpole out here, and we'll help you guide out there if that happens, but it's very unlikely, but need to talk about it. So what we're going to talk about today, Samantha and I will have a little bit of an overview of the user program, and then we're going to have two panels. One is getting a handle on scope, because that is one of our primary questions that comes up when people are drafting their proposals, like how much can I ask for, how much is too much, how many resources is too much or not enough, those kind of things. So we have some of our experts here and our integrated research platform leaders that can give you a very detailed rundown on that. And then we also have some panelists here for our second panel that have served with us and can really answer your questions on what they like, they like to see, what they don't, what reviews well, and what reviews maybe not as favorably. So we do have those. We're going to take a short break after panel one. So we'll take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back in here and have panel two. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Samantha.
Thank you, Rick. So first up, what is EMSL? So the Environmental Molecular Sciences Lab is a DOE Office of Science user facility. We're sponsored by the Biological and Environmental Research Program. So what we do as a user facility is we offer leading edge resources and expertise to the scientific community. So we partner with scientists from all over the world where they can access our resources and expertise to do their research, generally for free if they have an accepted proposal. So we collaborate with any researchers from academia, other government labs, and even industry. And we have a lot of different opportunities to work with EMSL available throughout the year through different proposal calls. And Rick's going to talk about those a little bit later. In addition to research needing to meet EMSL's mission and BER mission, we also have to fit research within three science areas that we have. So our first science area is functional and systems biology, led by Scott Baker. And within this science area, we have three integrated research platform leads. So these are just more specific areas of research, and the IRPs house expertise and resources for that topic and try to develop the science area as a whole. So within functional and systems biology science area, we have biomolecular pathways led by Mary Lipton, cell signaling and communications led by Alex Believ, and structural biology led by Scott Lee. Our second science area, environmental transformations and interactions, is led by John Barger. We have three IRPs in this area: biogeochemical transformations led by Emily Graham, rhizosphere functions led by Amira Kami, and one of our newer IRPs, terrestrial atmospheric processes, led by Swaroop China. And last but definitely not least, we have computing, analytics, and modeling led by Jay Bardan. And this has two IRPs within it: data transformations led by Kelly Stratton, and systems modeling led by Satish Kara. So this is just sort of an overview of these science areas, but you can find specific information about what types of research and resources are available in these science areas on our website. And next up, I'll turn it over to Rick to talk about some of our proposals.
Thank you, Samantha. So one thing that I failed to mention initially, again, I'd like to make this a very interactive experience for everybody. So if you have questions, just raise your hand and we'll get a mic out to you. If you happen to be online, we'll have one of our hosts moderate us and let us know that you have a question. We'll have you ask that question so we can all hear and then get you a response to that as well. So please feel free to let us know, and we'll take those as we go. So first of all, we have our large scale research proposal, and as it's kind of implies, it is our big call. So we have focused topic areas on this call, and they are to advance the understanding of both DOE, BER, and EMSL itself. These proposals, or when they become projects, they last for 2 years. The call opens in early January, and full proposals, I say opens, it opens for letters of intent. These calls do require a letter of intent to be submitted, and with full proposals being due in April. Large scale research call proposals start in October and then 2 years later, on September 30th, ending with our fiscal year. Next is our Facilities Integrating Collaborative User Science, or FICUS call. The FICUS program was originally established about 10 years ago and encourages really ambitious multidisciplinary science across multiple user facilities that we're partnering with. Similar to our large scale effort, these are 2-year projects. The calls open with letters of intent in February and culminate with us accepting the full proposals in May. Again, they start October 1st, just like our large scale, and they end 2 years later on September 30th. We also have our exploratory research, and this is kind of a personal favorite of mine because it's a ready, set, go kind of effort. These are employing a highlighted set of capabilities, which we generally are driven out of our science and technology program. So kind of newer things, or maybe things that we don't think are utilized as much as they ought to be or could be. And at least 30% of these highlighted capabilities, which are visible in the call guidance, need to be utilized in the proposal. The call duration is 9 months, with the letters of intent being opened in June and final proposals being submitted in August. The start date on those is January 1st, or this year, I think it might be the 2nd because the 1st starts on a Sunday or something like that. And then they also end September 30th. So again, really need to be primed and ready to go on this because there's no second year option and you have to get all the research done in 1 year. But a great opportunity to utilize these emerging technologies and some of these less utilized opportunities as well. We're also very excited to announce, or not, I guess it's not an announcement if we've been doing it for a little bit of a while now, but a recent addition to our portfolio is the Molecular Observation Network, or MONET. So we're seeking soil samples on a recurring basis to develop a fair or findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data model for continental scale database of soil organic matter. Wow, I should slow down. And molecular composition, soil microstructure properties. Super unique opportunity to get your soil samples in here and have us do a defined set of analysis. The call durations on this, or these proposal durations, are about 9 months. And the next call will open in November for a spring sampling season. But MONET is a little bit unique where we do have a defined set of analyses that we offer with this, and also a different proposal review system where instead of a full-blown external review panel, it is reviewed by our internal folks to see if it meets the criteria and make sure we're not accepting 20 soil samples from the exact same location. So we get that diversity we're looking for in there. And finally, we have limited scopes. And just as the name implies, it's a shorter term research. What is really based on, we use it, you can make your request, but our approvals are management decisions based on staffing, budget available, instrument availabilities, our scientist availability. These run for 90 days, cradle to grave, so from start to finish. The call opens the 1st of October with our fiscal year, And we curtail accepting these proposals in May. So that allows our scientists to really focus on our bigger calls for that end of the fiscal year, because there's always a big push to get final samples in, especially for projects that'll be ending. So we don't want to kind of cloud the large projects with the limited scope work towards those last couple months of the year. So you can pick your start date, pick your end date, and they're really focused, or the intention of limited scopes are to give people a foothold to have larger research projects and to maybe help you write a better proposal for our bigger calls, or to maybe finish up a few measurements for some a publication that you need to finish up. Maybe a reviewer has told you, no, we need a couple more measurements to put a bow on this and for us to think it's great. So those are kind of the focus areas of why we have this type of proposal. And of course, because BER is our sponsor and writes our check, we do like to give preference for BER focused proposals in this space. Before I move off and hand this aside, are there any questions I can field? We do get a lot of questions about proposals. Yeah, we'll have Aditi. We'll have a microphone to you momentarily.
Thank you. So you mentioned highlighted capabilities. Does that change with every call, or can users go and find these anywhere? How do they know which ones are highlighted?
Yeah, great question. The highlighted capabilities do evolve over time, as do our science focus areas on the larger calls. The larger calls, those focus areas, they kind of evolve at a little bit slower pace, and they're relatively similar from year to year, but they do change as interest migrates from our sponsor and our what our mission and where we want to take EMSL. But our highlighted capabilities, they do evolve from year to year, and they might be a complete change, but we might also have some ones that are recycled a bit, like, wow, we got a good foothold using laser ablation IRMS this year, but we could do a little bit more with it. So we're going to put it in the call again. So, but those are evaluated on a year-to-year basis by our science area leads in collaboration with our integrated research platform leads and our staff scientists as well.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering how many submissions you get for each of these proposal types, and what is the percentage of approvals that you do for them?
Yeah, great. Another great question, and one that we field a lot when we're interacting with potential authors. So for our large scale, we have 100-ish submissions a year. We're obviously hoping to grow that. We'd like our user community to be larger on a regular basis. For large scale and ficus, we accept about 30% of those proposals. The number for exploratory is a little more fluid. I guess let me go in order. So sorry, I'll back up just a little bit. Our ficus call, we have between 30 and 40 submissions generally a year. And we, again, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there is our acceptance rate. So right around that 30% mark. For our exploratory call, it does, it's vacillated a lot. Last 2 years ago, we had like 30, 33 proposals. And I think initially for LOIs this year, we had 45. So we had a big jump this year. And we don't know how many we're going to fund. Exploratory is a little elastic in that it's kind of the money we have left. We do budget a certain amount, but then if we have large scale or ficus ones that like maybe they didn't review really well, we didn't accept a ton like we could have potentially, we would roll some of that money into the exploratory program. This year we had great LSR and ficus projects, so we have kind of a defined pot of money for our exploratories that we're currently reviewing, but it's still fairly substantial, and the acceptance rate will probably be around 50% for the ficus or for exploratory this year. Last year you missed out if you didn't apply, because our acceptance rate was about 60% last year. So we decided to stretch our operating envelope and go out on a limb, and we're doing we're getting to collaborate with a bunch of great science because of it. So great question, though. Thank you. What other questions can I answer? A tentative hand over here. I'll get you a mic here momentarily. There you go.
So I know this funding are provided for EMSL to perform the work by the staff here, but if, for example, if you can send the student in, would that be a possibility for any of those proposals to take a student here, or I'm just curious about that.
Okay, thank you. Again, a great question. And something we're constantly talking about. So visitors to usual sending a student. Our current posture is that, first of all, we love visiting users, students, PIs, everybody in between. We love to have you here. We have some on campus right now. So we that's the whole purpose of our existence, is to further your science by helping you do what you do and having you come on site. Right now, our current posture, unfortunately, is not funding your students to come here, but that is something we are definitely considering as we move on, especially for some of our underserved communities, because we understand that they just don't have the resources that some of the bigger R1 schools might have to send people up here. So did that adequately answer you? What else? Perfect. There you go.
Thanks. So next up, strong way. Just want to give a little bit of an overview about what the proposal process looks like for EMSL. So Rick kind of alluded to this. This is gonna be general to most of our calls, but please note that each call has specific guidance for that call. So you should always check what's published for each year. In general, most of our proposal calls require a letter of an intent or an LOI. This is up to about 2 pages of information summarizing the specific aims, mission relevance, sort of the approach or the resources you want to use. And we also ask for active collaborators so we can start building review panels. The letter of intent is only reviewed internally. So first, our science area leaders review for mission relevance, which is very important. And then our integrated research platform leaders review the technical aspects of the project to make sure it's something that is feasible for EMSL. And then we have various subject matter experts that just look at hazards. Projects aren't usually weeded out based on hazards. It's just so we're aware of what compliance we might need. And we try to make a template for this available on the website so that it's easy and straightforward for users. After the letter of intent stage, users will be invited to submit a full proposal. Full proposals are typically about 4 pages of information. I believe FICUS is 6 pages. Those projects are a little more complex with all of the partners. So again, you're going to talk about specific aims, mission relevance, but we're going to need a lot more detail here about the work plan and what you propose to do at EMSL, including like computing approach, references, which aren't required at the LOI stage. And again, CVs and active collaborators. A template's available online so that you can remember to include all these appendices. So this is where it's a little bit different. We do have a similar internal review process for the full proposals, as I mentioned for the LOIs, but now we do external peer reviews for most of our calls. So science area leaders suggest potential reviewers based on the science in the proposals we receive. And then from there, we check for conflicts between proposers and potential reviewers. And then we give the potential reviewers a chance to self-select and say what proposals they think they are qualified to review. And then each proposal is evaluated by 2 to 3 external reviewers. And then that panel that reviewed makes a final ranking of the proposals that are recommended for funding. And then for the award decisions, we work closely with the science area leaders to evaluate the ranks that the peer review panel made to us, and also look at the availability we have for funding to figure out how many of those proposals on the list can be funded. And then, of course, DOE gets a final say. They review the projects that we're recommending, and our EMSL director also reviews. So that's just sort of a broad overview of the proposal process. Are there any new questions about this process? Yeah. You do.
Does the letter of intent look the same for each different funding or proposals, or are there different letter of intents for like ficus, large scale exploratory?
That's a great question. As far as I know, they're standard across all of them, and we're moving to a simpler form-based LOI template so that it's not like a free form document, just to make it a little more straightforward for users as well. We just want a broad overview of what's being proposed at that stage.
Who is eligible to apply?
Anyone, grad students can apply too, right?
Yeah, they can,
Yeah. So all the way down to grad students, you can apply, postdocs, PIs, anyone working in industry, anyone I'm not covering.
The one exception, and I shouldn't say exception, the one addition to what Samantha just listed out for you is Monet. That's a community science effort where anybody can propose. And really, we're hoping to get, some of the junior colleges, even high school science community in there on that. So no grad degree, no degree requirement to submit to Monet.
And then just one quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Are there any types of DOE graduate fellowships or anything that could help provide student support to be able to come out to the lab? In addition to if they got a user proposal funded?
You know.
So let me introduce Aditi Sengupta. She's another one of our project managers here with our team, and she has previously been an EMSL user, so she also has an outstanding perspective. And I'm going to defer this to her because she is an expert here.
Definitely not an expert. There are DOE graduate research fellowships that you can separately seek out, but EMSL necessarily won't fund anything. I think we would be happy to provide a support letter if that's required on an ongoing project or something for that proposal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
actually have a question.
Just a quick follow-up, those support letters, we do those frequently, like to the tune of about at least once a month. So, and not just like for those graduate support things, but for other grant applications and things like that. So feel free to reach out to us if you need an endorsement of that as well. 'Cause we're happy to tell people that, yeah, this is one of our collaborators. Aditi.
So question about the review process. Is the rubric available for the users? Like when they write their proposal, can they see how they will be graded? And is that easily located somewhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do publish the review criteria when each call is announced, trying to make it transparent. We want users to succeed and be able to write the information that we're evaluating on. Yes, so all of that information is on our website, published with the call. I think.
One quick
Rebecca.
question on the review process. Is there a way to volunteer to be a reviewer to better understand what the process entails from the reviewer
The
side?
best question ever. Yes, we always need reviewers. We would love for you to be a reviewer. You can email the User Program Services Office, which is just emsl@pnnl.gov, and say you're interested in being a reviewer, and we will definitely contact you because we always need reviewers. So postdocs can participate, but not graduate students. Yeah.
There you go, sir.
Yeah, now in line with this, what is the proportion of project that pass through the gate in terms of academia, industry, private individuals, high schools,
That's a great question. It does vary based on which call it is. In general, most of our users come from academia, probably about 70 to 80% of users are from
But you get
academia.
applications from high schools?
I don't know if
Or
that would really apply to Monet. I'm not sure. That's our newer call, so we haven't looked at the like the demographics of who's submitting yet. So I don't think we've had anyone from a high school yet, but they are trying to, like
Fair enough.
Rick mentioned, make that more of a community focused effort compared to our other calls. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
yeah, more or less, yeah. Intention could be one thing, and then, who is actually getting through and doing stuff, that could be
Yeah,
a different story.
That's
right?
something that we're evaluating regularly, especially like we want to be conscious of diversity, equity, and inclusion in STEM fields. So we are evaluating that and looking at how our outreach efforts are getting the people who we want to increase their access and make sure that they know that EMSL is a resource for them as well.
And just to build a little context for you, Monet, although we've just got through our first cycle of accepting proposals from Monet. So we just launched it about 6 or 7 months ago. So very new. Outreach obviously is in progress and evolving. And the first people that grasp onto this are established soil scientists, right? But definitely the focus is to have that trickle down throughout the scientific community to help really bring up the next generation of soil scientists and ecologists, if that makes sense to you.
On the topic of thinking about being inclusive and for students to be able to afford to come to work in the lab, are there affordable lodging options that are going to come back up? Is the guest house going to open up again, or?
That is not a current plan of PNNL to open the guest house again. A little outside of our control, but it's a good point about the lodging. For our EMSL summer school that we offer each year, we do offer travel support for students to come to EMSL for that program, but not for user projects at this time.
I think that would be good feedback to filter up.
Yeah.
It's just, even if we have a funded user proposal, flying students in and lodging them is really expensive. And it was very surprising to hear that the guest house was no longer an available option, because that was primarily how we were able
Yeah,
to afford that before. So
yeah, it's great feedback. We'll share that. I hear from a lot of users that they want the guest house. So
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of reasons, cost is only one of them, honestly, just the proximity to the research facility and the access that it affords. So definitely we'll channel that back upwards. We obviously can't make promises on behalf of PNNL level efforts, but definitely we'll make sure that they hear your voice.
we should probably move on to our first panel at this point. So let's take a second to get our panelists up here, Scott, Jay, and Amir.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for a great discussion. There's some great questions and we appreciate the interaction. I'd like to move on to our second segment here, which is a panel on getting a handle on scope. I'm going to just let the panelists introduce themselves as they go, and we do have one substitution due to a late minute emergency, so we'll just let them go, and then we will, after their introductions, please raise your hands or virtual hands if you're online, and we will field questions from you on how to get a handle on scope. And you'll hear from the experts who help look at that. It's on a little closer.
Hello,
Yeah.
it's better.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Amir Ahkami, staff scientist here in EMSL. I've been here for about 8 years. By training, I'm a plant biologist, but currently I'm leading integrated research platform, or IRP, for the rhizosphere function. Very glad to be here and answer any questions.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jay Bardhan. I'm the science area lead for computing, analytics, and modeling. I'm sitting in place of Satish Kara, who had to leave yesterday, unfortunately. I'm originally an electrical engineer, but I got into computational chemistry and biochemistry in grad school, and that led me into the interactions with the DOE world. I've been at EMSL for 3 years.
My name is Scott Lee, and I am the Integrated Research Platform Lead for Structural Biology. Biochemist by training, but I do a lot of work doing instrument development for Department of Energy and bioimaging program. And I've been to EMSL probably since the day it opened, so I've been here a long time. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Thank you, and we do appreciate you taking your time out of your days to be here and help facilitate our discussion and answer questions from our audience. So who would like to lead things off? Sure, yeah. Me? I do have some questions in case we have silence from our audience. So I'll be glad to start this out. So my first question, I'm going to point to Scott here. So if I'm writing a proposal, Scott, do I need to have a detailed scope statement determined at the LOI stage?
Short answer is no. Basically, as Samantha pointed out, the LOI is primarily for us to determine, does the work that you propose going to fit the scope of BER? Does it fit the call language? And can we do the work, right? And that is the primary purpose of that. You do not have to have the entire scope of the proposal hashed out at that point. You have to have a pretty good idea what you want to do at that point, so we can understand what it is that you're trying to do in the proposal. However, what I would say is most proposers do not have a good handle on the full capabilities that we have here at EMSL, right? And so you may have some things that you think of, but some other things that we have that we can do for you that you do not you're not familiar with. And so what happens is when we get those letters of intent in, we read them and we go through those first 3 criteria going forward. But if there's something that sort of kicks out at us or stares us in the face and like, oh, this person should really be doing, some mass spec down here, then what we will do is we will try to alert the person, the cognizant person in that area. And when you get the letter of intent back, you probably get some indication of who are the people you should contact. Not only who the host IRP is, that's sort of the person like Amir or myself, that sort of shepherds the proposal through, but also some of the instrument scientists that involved. And so those people that you get back on that letter or email you get are people you should probably contact if you're interested in finding out more about what it is your scope or you're really trying to nail things down. So that is it. To answer that question.
Thank you, Scott. Before I throw out my next scripted question, yeah, we have excellent. Now you guys can fight about who answers.
Is there such a thing as too broad of a scope? So for example, you have the kind of topics that come out with the large scale proposal calls. If I care about doing all of this research with all the mass spectrometry, but I also know I need computing and perhaps a lot of that, would that be considered too broad? And should you focus on one area?
So I guess my comment to that would be, there's a certain range of effort that we can support here in EMSL for the proposals. And we just can't do 20, 30 different type of capabilities along those. So I would probably try to stick with the ones that you know that you're going to need an effort. And if it seems appropriate for you to go and ask for these other capability to support that work, we will add that to your proposal. We'll try to add that to proposal. So, I guess I would not ask for too much when you're trying to ask for a proposal. I would just, stick with what you want. And I would have that conversation with the IRP leads and instrument scientists, because they have a good handle on sort of what sort of level of effort is needed. And there can be that conversation back and forth about, okay, yeah, this is going to be too much work, but let's focus on the things that really matter to you. And so we can actually sort of put those up front forward.
Let's see, yeah.
This is Samantha and Rick highlighted earlier. I want to reinforce it. This is a very interactive process when it is working well. And if the proposing team's interests are spreading, that maximum possible effort across too many capabilities, you'll get feedback as at the LOI stage or as you're refining the proposal and talking with the IRP leads and any experimental scientists. Per your question about the computing, this is why I really wanted to jump in. We really want to encourage teams that want to utilize a range of capabilities, including both experiment and computing. That we absolutely do encourage. But as Scott highlighted, you can imagine that if your request sort of diffuses effort across many, many capabilities, a reviewing panel might look at it and say, we're not sure that there's going to be enough work in any one of these to really move the needle on the science.
Yeah, just in a similar direction as Scott and Jay mentioned, you're really not alone for the whole process, and even before writing your LOI. So you can always reach out to EMSL user office or IRP leads, whoever you know, and even staff scientists. You may know someone in EMSL already work with. You can contact them, and we can even help you, develop your LOI. And I would say the most successful, proposal are those that actually contacted us, because, we can really work with you through the whole process, and that help you, find the right scope for your proposal. And the other point with the scope, that as Rick and Samantha mentioned, that also depends on the specific program that we have. If it is LSR, of course, your scope is a bit higher than exploratory. So that also, kind of dictate the scope that you're looking for.
Thank you. What other questions can we answer from the audience? We had a hand up somewhere, it looks like.
Not anymore.
So this is efficiency in action right here. Right. So lacking any audience questions, I'll throw out another one of the ones that we answer on a frequent basis, or that we pitch to our IRP leaders on a regular basis. How many samples can I send to EMSL? And can you maybe give me an example of what an appropriate number of sample is for a specific technique that you might steward? or for Jay, how much computing time can I ask for?
You guys go first.
Yeah, that again, it really depends. And if you're on board with your idea, sometime in advance, we can definitely help more. But just give you one, as an example, if you propose to do 500 samples on our proteomics pipeline or nanopods or even spatial proteomics, that's a lot, even for LSR 2-year project. But and also the number of capabilities that you're asking and the number of samples for each capability. So all of this really matter. If you're really working with our staff and IRP lead, I think you should be in a good shape for the number of samples. But as another example that could be in the right scope of number of samples, for example, something between 50 or 60 samples or below 100 for GC or LCMS pipeline, for example, under LSR should be considered as a kind of right number of samples. But again, it really all depends on what other capabilities you're asking for.
With respect to computing time, we have about 1.5 million node hours that we can provide in any 1 year. And we generally allocate 3 million node hours to users because many don't use their full time. One of the things to keep in mind is that you can ask for quite a large number, say 200,000, but we can't guarantee that you will get all of those, especially if you wait till, say, the last week of the fiscal year before your project closes, when everybody else has the same idea.
And I will just have one last final comment, and that is, it all depends on what type of analysis you're trying to do. So specifically, you could ask for electron microscopy for a sample, and that could easily be 1 or 2 hours per sample, right? However, if there are certain type of analysis that you want to do, it actually may take 6, 7, 8 hours or something like that, especially for like cryo-EM. We try to run things like overnight and so forth to get this signal to noise what it that needs to be. So I would say if you're not sure, just contact the IRP leads or the instrument custodians, because those are your best contacts as far as understanding sort of what number of samples we can accommodate in a certain proposal.
Thank you all again. Do we have, we have a couple questions. Outstanding. We'll go in the back to begin with, please.
So the user proposals, can they come from anywhere in the world? I mean, from India, or does it has to be more focused for the state's perspective? I mean, can anyone from India apply for the user proposals?
Yes, so it could be worldwide. So we can accept proposals from everything. Is that correct?
There is a prohibition here. Jay, go ahead. You're on the panel.
There are certain restrictions. If the Department of State has restricted engagements with certain entities, whether that's in a particular country or particular institutions in particular countries, we're not able to accept proposals or discuss proposals with those institutions. But that's a pretty small list. There we go.
Cool. Thank you.
So Jay, you were mentioning kind of timelines of when people typically use their resources. And I'm wondering, is there like estimated wait times for any of the resources that is posted anywhere for us to reference?
That is a great question. On the computing side, the answer is usually between no time at all to wait and a couple hours to at most a day. It's quite different from other computing resources, such as at NERSC. That's by design. We want to make sure that it is used in a way that's sort of as interactive as possible for your science. For the other experimental modalities, I will let these folks answer.
I know for like the mass spec, they go through like a planning stage and they sort of queue up all of the proposals based on demands and so forth, and samples come in. And so that could be anywhere from days to probably months to get it in. So, and I think it's up to, you know, the IRP leads to try to figure out, you know, how that, which proposals are going to come in and so forth. And so if you have if you have samples coming in, for example, on some of these capabilities like mass spec, contact the people up front, you know, talk to the program managers, talk to the IRP leads, and, you know, give them a heads up about how many samples you're going to have and when you're going to expect it. So we can give them enough advance notice ahead of time so that we can plan on getting your sample in with the least amount of, you know, wait time as possible.
Sure, I don't have nothing to add. You already nailed that question.
Yeah, I think we had another audience question.
Yeah, I got a quick question here. So I know it's experimental part of the research. A lot of us are actually doing experiments. We know that quite well, but if you want to add a computational portion to that proposal, but in a case that I don't understand much about, for example, the simulation and those type of stuff, I want to know how much the engagement from Jay, for example, to help us on developing that part.
Thank you for that question. It's the short answer is please reach out and we will go find people across PNNL who have the closest expertise to what you might want to do. And we'll just talk about the interest that you have and the skill sets that folks have here. One of the great strengths for computational modeling at EMSL is that we are very happy and enthusiastic to reach out and help bring expertise that's not necessarily sitting within EMSL to bear to advance your science. There's a huge range of things that can be done with computing these days, obviously, and we will do our very best to find ways to move your science forward.
Great, thank you.
Do we have additional questions from the audience?
So I must say first that thank you for organizing this. This is very helpful, and I'm glad you were giving us the time to answer these questions. I want to ask questions that are post a successful proposal. We just got an LSR, which got started on the 1st, and we want maybe an overview of how EMSL connects or works with people who've been funded over the next 2 years period. And then maybe I have some other questions, but I'll hear this first.
You want me to? All right. So I guess I have the microphone. So our project managers will start by arranging a kickoff call that includes the project team, any folks who have joined the team since the proposal was submitted, as well as all of the appropriate IRP leads, experimental scientists, computational scientists, to talk through the proposed project. Often, although I can let Rick or Samantha correct me if this is wrong, the ones that I've seen frequently, those kickoff calls open with the PI or a delegate giving a short-ish presentation to help everybody who wasn't necessarily part of the proposal development process understand the context for the work, how their piece of the project might fit in. And from there, we start talking about rough timelines and what will be needed when. So those kinds of logistics. And I think from there, we typically wind up with at least a few next steps to concretely get started. Does that help, Ritti?
Thank you. So, touching on the previous question of resources that, we know, especially within the PNNL EMSL ecosystem, if there were folks who are outside of EMSL who we think can really contribute to the project. Is that something as PIs we could bring to you as the IRP, and how much leverage do you have in making that happen?
I'll speak for the parts of EMSL that I know. We welcome it. We don't always have, you use the word leverage. We don't always have the ability to bring somebody aboard an EMSL user project if they're dramatically overcommitted, like many folks are. We might struggle to bring them aboard. Frequently, someone would suggest someone else who could come in their place. Or maybe we bring them aboard. If you particularly know them and it would be an effective conversation, we can bring them into the mix to help refine that concept.
Yeah, I would just add, just because people are in the EMSL organization doesn't mean they're the only peoples that can work on your projects. And so we frequently reach out to other people across PNNL to get that additional expertise to try to help out when possible.
So maybe just want to make sure if I got that question correctly. So you mean after your project gets approved, you want to have someone from other institution to work with you?
Within
Oh, within
PNNL.
PNNL. Okay. Then,
So, you know, we have like several components. We have an NMR component. It's a computing heavy LSR, but it has a few other components. And
Okay.
even within computing, there are like 3 or 4 different types of computing that we are requesting.
Okay, so I think they already answered that, but just to add one more comment on that, if someone wants to know, of course, you know, PIs who has that idea are very welcome to, you know, have other folks outside PNNL, have other co-PIs. Maybe a portion of work could be even done by someone else in other institution, and the rest can be done by EMSL as a whole project. So we don't have to necessarily have everything in your mind done in EMSL. A portion of that could be in EMSL, and you probably have some other things in your lab or other co-PI that you have. And I have one more point regarding to your first question, that how things move forward during you know, the 2 year of your project. I have one comment always, you know, try to emphasize to the PI with approved projects. So everyone knows that, you know, 2 year flies very fast. And we all sometimes we, you know, after year 1, we have in a situation that, you know, we still haven't received samples, or we are still working, you know, with test samples. We understand all, you know, science, so things can be changed, or maybe some samples are not going to be ready on time. But if PIs could really, you know, plan in advance and manage things in a way that at least if there are any test samples are going to be, you know, evaluated, which will be discussed during the kickoff meeting, then please make sure to have those samples as soon as possible, because we do also have limitations. We have queues here in EMSL. There are lots of projects. So we just want to make sure if there are test samples included, we just receive them as soon as possible, that we can, you know, optimize any capability or methods that get ready for the main samples. In some cases, test samples could be very helpful, particularly if we haven't worked with those sample type or our capability needs to be optimized. But even if we can eliminate the use of test samples, that will really help facilitate the whole process. Yeah, this is just my comment to all PIs.
I would like to know what was the process used by EMSL to initiate the 1000 fungal proteins project? And can we imagine leveraging other projects like this one, maybe based on a very successful or interesting ficus or large-scale research proposal?
So the 1000 protein or 1000?
Yeah, the 1000
fungal
fungal proteins,
Yeah,
what was basically the idea behind the launch of this project?
yeah, that one is a relatively new program, right? So maybe you know more about that.
That's more than I know.
So we kicked off Monet, 2 years ago, or I guess about, it was a pilot program a couple of years ago. And I think the idea was, well, that's sort of a focus, a thrust area in the environmental transformations science area. And we saw the need to actually do something similar in the functional systems and biology division. And through our discussions with JGI, basically, we came up with the idea that we really need to, focus on an area where we can look at sort of proteins of unknown structure and function in this fungal community, because that's an area that's sort of understudied as much. And so we just saw that as a really ripe opportunity going forward. And it also helps to support some of the DigiFin big goals that we have there. So that's sort of the idea behind us going forward on this.
So what other questions can we answer? And I'd like to take this opportunity to specifically check in with our folks that are online. We do have a handful of people online, and give an opportunity for those participants to pose questions to our panelists as well. I'm hearing nothing. What other questions can we have from our in-person audience? Or everybody is just really pining for their break that's upcoming. Is that what I'm hearing? Let me look at my other questions. I think we've covered the majority of our questions. Scott, do you have something?
I'll just add one final thing, and that is when you get a proposal and you get your word letter and it says you're going to have this so much time on this instrument and this so much time on this other instrument and so forth. What I would say is science moves forward in a nonlinear fashion, and it takes twists and turns all along the way. And so even though you might have planned to do this type of work, along the way, you might say, you know what, it would be really nice if I could do this other capability, but it's not in my award. That doesn't matter. So basically at that point, you need to have a discussion with the project manager and the IRP lead to say, I think it would make really a lot of sense for me to do some, top-down proteomics and so forth. So have that discussion with the program manager and IRP, and if it makes sense, we can make the right turn and do the right capabilities on this. So don't sort of take what you have in the award letter as sort of dogma and this is what you're going to do, because we all understand that science sort of meanders through and takes left and right turns.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Great point. We know science happens, priorities change, other focuses change. So definitely want to accommodate those kind of reasonable changes. Anything else from our audience? Hearing none. I would like to thank our audience for a robust round of questions. So thank you very much. We do appreciate the interaction and grilling our panelists here. And we also appreciate the panelists taking their time to interact and answer questions to help you craft better proposals. And I just want to leave you with the fact that not just our panelists, but our office and all of the leadership from our science side, they are available to you all the time. All their information is available on our website very prominently, and we actually want you to interact with us. So questions, please inundate us with them. Let us know what's on your mind, what you're thinking, even if you're just hatching the idea of a proposal. Run it by us, and we'll get you some feedback and help germinate that and grow that. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. And what time do we need them back, Samantha?
Let's see, 10 minutes, 11:30. We'll start the next panel, get some coffee, a snack. Use the restroom.
Yeah, so we'll resume at 11:30-ish.
Yeah, if you want to come up now, that'd be great. No, just any one of these three would be fine. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I think just to make sure we're on time, can get started. My partner in crime is not. Okay, I think we can go ahead and start the last panel discussion. I'll just ask the panelists to come on up. Cool. And let's give that over to you guys. Okay, thanks everyone for joining. So we have one more panel Q&A session. This one's going to be a little more geared towards the review process, what reviewers are looking for, things like that. So with that, I will turn it over to Carolyn to introduce herself.
Thanks, Samantha. So I'm Carolyn Pierce. I'm a staff scientist here at PNNL. I have reviewed proposals for EMSL and also been an EMSL user. So happy to answer questions.
Hello again. I'm still Jay Bardhan. As a science area lead for computing, I arrange for a review panel for proposals that sit with CAM. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Becky Hess, and EMSL actually funded my PhD program, and I have been very involved in reviewing proposals since I finished my postdoc. And my focus is on biochemistry, synthetic biology, and I study host pathogen interactions.
Great, thank you. I'll kick it off with one question to get us started and then see if that makes you guys interested in asking some new questions. So this is a question for everyone on the panel. What is a quality you've noticed about superstellar proposals?
I'll go ahead and start. What I've noticed about superstellar proposals is that it's really clear that the proposer has reached out to the EMSL community and the community at large to really put together a tight approach, and their use of resources makes sense. And then they've also aligned really well with BER. So one of the things that I'm not certain was clear to everybody, but we as reviewers, when we get a proposal, there's a technical review piece that comes after you've submitted, where the science leads have said, hey, this is feasible, or they've asked for an appropriate number of samples, or they haven't asked for an appropriate number of samples, or they're saying they only need 100 hours of use, but the number of samples really equates to like 500 hours of use. And so we take those things into consideration when we're reviewing. And so those are kind of the things that stand out to me.
Thank you. So yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would just say that for me, one of the strengths of a really good proposal is really to link with Jay and have that computational aspect as well as an experimental aspect. So you're making use of all of the capabilities, and you're showing how when you generate data, you'll be able to interrogate that data and then make it available. The other thing that I find really interesting is when you have sort of unique sample sets to look at from different locations, and then combine that with a multimodal approach. So, you know, really taking advantage of all the different mapping capabilities there are at EMSL, and then again, being able to analyze and interrogate that data set through the computational resources.
I'll add a point about I want to add something to the idea of clarity. I'm particularly sensitive to this because computing panels review science that is targeting both the environmental transformations and interactions sort of mission space, as well as science that's focused in biology. And so, as you can imagine, our review panels are extraordinarily broad in their expertise, and one needs to write a proposal with that in mind. One value of the letter of intent process is that it helps us identify potential reviewers who would be able to expertly assess your proposal. And we do that, but at the same time, there are multiple readers for every proposal, and we cannot in any way guarantee that all of the readers of your proposal will have equal high expertise in the subject matter. So in my experience, the proposals that review the best are things that can be very clear to a non-expert. Oh, they're going to use this technique to try and answer this question, sort of 1 or 2 sentences. It's crisp, it's clear to the non-expert. And then there's a discussion maybe amongst people who didn't read it, but know a little bit about little pieces, and they assemble a picture from the whole.
Great, those are really great insights. Do we have any questions from the audience in person or online?
I had a question about how you guys assess somebody's experience or a team's experience in the review panel. People that might be starting out in the field, is there more emphasis put on their lack of experience, or more assessment put on maybe who they're collaborating with? Trying to get a sense of how you take that into account.
It's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, so we do look at publishing track record and whether or not you are collaborating with the right people. Not that collaborations are required. Certainly, PIs will independently submit a proposal that is just for, the use of their laboratory, and that's not looked down upon by any stretch of the imagination. But there is emphasis placed on what kind of track record you have publishing in the area, more so than, oh, this person's only 2 years out of their PhD. But if they have, 5 or 6 good papers, that's a really good indicator to me that there's a lot of progress that's been made already, and, value in that, and clearly being able to push the science forward.
Yeah, I would just add to that it's a great question, because it's a great opportunity when you're putting together your proposal to think about your team and to look around and really put together a strong team that can make the most out of the access to the instruments, and that is one of the review criteria. But I think we do encourage and look for those sort of cross-disciplinary and teams that have people at various stages of their career, right? Because we want to encourage a broad and diverse user community. So.
I think I have a question for Becky and Carolyn, which is, because I know the computing panels, but not the others. If someone is focused on a particular kind of space of science, say a particular organism, but they haven't done mass spec experiments before, and they're coming in to request that, is that taken into account that they simply haven't done any of that before, but that's fine, they're coming to a strong place?
For me, that is actually showing a lot of understanding of the field and a need to use instrumentation that maybe it's reasonable they don't have access to. And so wanting to grow their science that way is really a highlight for me.
Thanks.
Thanks. I'll just add one thing to that, which is something we've started doing recently on one of our calls, which is the exploratory call, and we have been moving to a dual anonymous peer review process for that call. And one of the key differences from our larger calls like LSR and FICUS is that we don't have a review criteria for the team qualifications. So that is not judged or discussed in the same way it is at our other panels. But it is still important at the end, after the proposals have been scored and ranked, we do look at the team, who's making up the team, and only like very major grave concerns are brought up. So if there's a reason to think that the work can't be accomplished and we can't get good science, then it will be a concern for whether or not the proposal is funded. But otherwise, it's not the traditional discussion of who's on the team that happens in some of the other panels. I just wanted to point that out. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an important point, because what was crossing my mind was that how do you avoid always funding the same, big names, right? So all go to the same few people, right? So double blind peer review could be an answer. Do you think you can, based on the test you did, do you think you're going to expand that to the other types of proposals and calls?
That's a great question. We are considering that. It's still a really new process for us on the exploratory call. And it's a lot of administrative effort to make the call happen, and our proposal system's not set up for the dual anonymous right now. So we are exploring expanding it, but we're also sort of looking closely at what sort of impact we're seeing on the exploratory call first. So yeah, we are interested in doing that more, but sort of tentatively wading into it as we get our systems on board to support that type of review process. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, more or less.
I'll go to one more question here for all the panelists. What's a common mistake that you've seen a proposer make that made their proposal unsuccessful?
I think burying the logic, especially for complex proposals where there are a number of parts, it can be hard for a reviewer, again, not necessarily expert in particularly what you're doing, to read through it and see the justification for the different techniques and why they fit together. That's what I'd say.
Thanks, Jay. And I would say the most common mistake that I've seen is just making it really clear how your proposal aligns with the call and with BER priorities and with the EMSL mission. And that, again, is one of the review criteria. And so if that's not addressed, it can be a really strong proposal and a really strong team, but you can't grade the proposal highly if that's not clearly stated.
I would absolutely echo what Carolyn said, because one of the most important criteria is how it aligns with the mission, because obviously these roll up to DOE actually approving the proposal. It doesn't just simply rest with the review panel. So just foot stomping that a little bit. But something else that Carolyn said that I think is really important is one of the things throughout the scientific community, I think, is that we're getting really good at generating really large data sets and then letting them sit on the shelf and collect dust, which is really unfortunate. And I've worked with some really gifted statisticians and mathematicians here that can help you with that, so that that is not the fate of your data, and making sure that you roll that into your proposal, I think, is really important. Your data management plan, if you're not going to be using the computational resources here, I think is a really critical piece that sometimes just gets glossed over by proposers, because the the cool things are the instruments and, you know, the pretty pictures that you can sometimes generate with microscopy. And that's understandable, but having a full integrated analysis of your data is something that I think is really important given the amount of effort that it takes to run these kinds of samples.
So thank you. I'll take that as an opportunity to plug something that CAM has recently created. There's now one integrated research platform called Data Transformations, which is led by Kelly Stratton, who's sitting in the back. Kelly is an expert biostatistician, right? And so what we're trying to do is become more proactive in helping potential users engage with folks who understand how to do the various kinds of data analysis that EMSL, data types that EMSL actually generates. And so as you're preparing a proposal, don't be surprised, and please do talk with Kelly and her folks if we encourage you to talk with them. They can help with experiment design. They can help craft the plan for how data analysis will be done. And they're really, really good at this.
This has been really helpful discussion. Thank you. I had a quick question related to the methods section of the proposal. Sometimes our team fully knows how we would apply a certain type of technique, and we're able to write that up very clearly. But then other times we've had really great conversations with additional EMSL scientists about instrumentation that we don't know on our side. And we've brainstormed with the team about how it may fit, but we never know how much detail to dedicate to these new techniques to show the connection to the science, whether one or two sentences is enough, or if we need to elaborate more, even if we don't quite know how it's going to fit yet. It would be really helpful to have some insight on that. That's something that always comes up when we're writing these. So
That's a really great question, because some of the things that I really like to see that users do is stretch the capabilities that we have. We're really good at some things, and we're learning in other areas. So it's great to hear that you're engaged with the EMSL leads and working that out. I would say that if it's something brand new that EMSL has never done before, that you'd maybe want to spend, you know, a good chunk of a paragraph on that. But if it's, we're going to do proteomics, I mean, you could cite a paper and leave it at that. But I would definitely say that because the technical review will say, you know, we've never done this before, so it is a bit of a risk. We would want to see a little bit more information in that instance.
and if this is something where the EMSL team is very well versed, but it's new for us, like the proposers, that's another type of question that's also come up in terms of how much to elaborate.
I think if you can show it as a progression, right? So you can start off by demonstrating things that you know well that you've done, and as Becky said, put some references so that we can see the track record, and then show how that flows into this new area. That's really helpful, and you obviously have room in the proposal to say, you know, this is a new area for us, but we've spoken to this person at EMSL, and we're going to collaborate with them, who are very experienced, and then that makes it very easy to review and understand where you're coming from.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions? I'll ask another one. This is a question for Jay, but anyone else can add to it as well. My proposal had a high score, but it was denied. Why? What can I do to improve?
The first thing that I'd recommend doing is to look carefully at the proposal review summary that you get with the result. The summary is written by either the science area lead who is sitting and chairing the panel, or a delegate who is an expert in that science. But the summary is then sent to the whole panel for any necessary corrections as a sort of high level capture of what was strong about the proposal and what the committee, what the panel regarded as its key weaknesses. And so I would encourage folks to take that very, very seriously. If your proposal was weak in one particular kind of area that's called out and you wanted to say, could I have done this? Could I have done this? Could I have done this? Then I think it's okay to reach out to the science area lead and we will share what we are able to. Obviously, we're not going to share the internal discussions, but sometimes we can add context.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah. Lauren, you need a designated microphone. You're too far away from all the edges.
So is there a very big difference in score between proposals that tend to get funded and proposals that tend not to get funded?
It depends a great deal on the call and the science area. Some of the calls are highly competitive, and usually, at least in my experience, having been here for 3 years, that's all. The science area leads will, with the user services office, look at the collection of scores as well as the ranking that is produced by the panel. And it is surprising how often there is sort of a noticeable drop in scores at some point that's pretty high up. And that is frequently used as a starting point for deciding what is fundable and what is not. And then we have to adjust around budget. But usually there's a significant drop that is clear to everybody looking at the data.
Other questions? I'll ask another one. Mostly for Becky and Carolyn, what is something surprising you've learned serving as an EMSL reviewer?
So I've been surprised at the types of model systems that folks want to start using to answer some questions. People have not been afraid to stray from some of the more, it's nice to see not E. coli in a proposal. So I'm guilty of using a very easy model system in some of my proposals. And so it's been nice to see that people want to, stretch the science in that respect. So that's been a nice surprise for me.
I think the surprise for me is the actual reviewing process is that how much we agree as reviewers, even though we're from quite a diverse interdisciplinary background. But when it comes to the process of going through the reviews, there's not a lot of arguments, which was surprising to me.
Anything you want to add, Jay?
That's great.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, get you a microphone 1 second.
I got you.
To the point of high risk versus low risk proposals, where do you stand?
Great question.
It's a great question. I think for me, and this is just a personal opinion, I think you need to have a bit of both, right? You've got to have something in there that you know is going to be successful, and then something that is going to stretch either EMSL or you or the samples to show how you're going to push the boundary forward, right? Because proposals don't get funded if it's just doing the same thing over and over again. But I think you have to have that balance.
So I'm very pro high risk proposals. The only if it's very clear though that if an initial step is going to sink the entire proposal, that's not something that I'm going to give a high score to. But if there's a chance that even you don't meet your full specific aim, but there's an opportunity to learn something important from what you propose. I get very excited about those kinds of proposals.
Thank you.
Other questions? Let's see. I feel like we've covered this one a little bit, but how about, I've never worked with EMSL at all. Where do I start?
I'm gonna say that the best thing to do is literally just go to the EMSL website for the type of work that you're interested in and make a cold introduction, because just because your introduction is cold does not mean you're not going to receive a warm response. We're very interested in supporting the community. It's the reason why we exist. It's really important that we get a diverse number of people and types of questions for BER in the door. And we want to work with you. So my thought would be, if you've never worked with EMSL before, just go to the website. You can type in the type of instrument you're interested in or the type of call you're interested in, and folks are listed there, and they will get back to you. You're not just a line in their inbox that they're not going to care about.
I'm always excited to get an email. I was the IRP lead before Satish stepped in. I'm always excited to get an email about, I think we might be able to use this thing, but I don't know how. Boy, there's nothing that gets sort of the curiosity going, and you know, the space of things we do is so broad that we've almost never actually seen something like that before, and so we get to think about what might be possible and how it links to all these other things. I mean, it's like it's a highlight for the day to get an email like that. So please do reach out.
I guess logistically, just get on there and get your profile set up. That's the first thing.
Amazing.
And I think EMSL is really good at offering like the different platforms, right? You might not want to launch straight into a large scale proposal, but there's those exploratory ones so that you get more of a sense of what's available, and you get that initial data that you can put in your proposal.
Yeah. So this goes back to the previous discussion that we were having about scores, you know, and low scores. I don't think we can see the scores, right? And so, you know, we from Slack, we had 2 proposals, and the text of the reviews seem, you know, objectively equally good, and one of them gets funded and one not. So we are a little bit in the dark as to why. And also there are various different sections. If we had access to the scores, and if one of them, we knew this part was rated lower, then we would then work towards making that better. So that it's just a suggestion. You know, I come from a different user facility where we have very similar review process, but we do make these numbers available to our users so they have a clue about what the reviewers there rated them at.
Thanks for highlighting that. I will defer to Rick and Samantha as to the constraints that we may be under. But I appreciate that where possible, more transparency is always more helpful.
So I believe that you get the overall proposal score, but not the individual criteria scores, right? But to your point, I would be open to providing the criteria scores, not per individual reviewer necessarily, but for each section, definitely. I can see that would be very, very helpful, especially if you were thinking about fine tuning it and resubmitting for another cycle. I can see a lot of value in that. And I really often, and this is a very, you know, I've had 30 seconds to think about this, but on first blush, I cannot see a drawback of giving you that information, but we'll chat about it with our science area leads and IRP leaders and see. But again, I have no fundamental objection. As Jay said, transparency is a great tool for improvement.
Other questions? I'll ask one more. We touched on this a little bit, but the science at EMSL is so broad. So this question is for you, Jay. What level of expertise for my particular research topic do the reviewers have?
It depends a lot on what exactly you do. I think there are certainly areas where there's a high confidence that you'll get a reviewer who understands what you do. If you're doing really out there stuff, it's going to be a little bit harder. I can't guarantee that there will be a certain level of expertise, but I want to ask Carolyn and Becky, I think it's entirely possible for proposals to be funded, with to be fundable, highly fundable, and not have reviewers who are super expert in that particular thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree, Jay. I think you raised the point earlier, and Becky, that if you make the proposal clear, so it's very easy to follow what the objective is and why the resources will help you to get to that objective. I think even if the reviewer isn't an expert, that they can follow. And there's always multiple reviewers, so it might be that one is more expert and one isn't, and I think the reviews will reflect that. But yeah, I think it is certainly possible, even if it's a new area and you're not confident that there'll be somebody who's as expert as you in that area, that it will get reviewed by people who are experienced in looking at proposals. And so if you write a good proposal, it will get funded.
I would just say that I have reviewed proposals where I've tried to do the experiment that they're proposing, and I know it's not going to work because I tried it 8,000 times. And then there are proposals where I have to do my own due diligence, and I do quite a bit of background reading to get up to speed as much as I possibly can. So it does depend, and that's why I appreciate that we have 2 or 3 reviewers on each proposal, because hopefully someone smarter than me is also reading this. But I think that most of the reviewers that I have worked with, we do have a lot of experience in reviewing proposals and being able to determine whether or not there's probability of success. And so that's really what we're looking for. And I think that having that experience makes it a reasonable approach, even if we're not the deep expert that you may be in your own field.
Other questions? I think we have about 10 minutes left, and our other panelists are still here. So if there are questions just broadly about things we covered, happy to answer those as well. Oh.
So EMSL staff are not allowed to be on the proposals, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I thought that was the case. Just checking, because we're allowed to be on proposals for our facility. So just checking. So how many EMSL staff are willing to read the full proposal you write?
I don't know that I've ever gotten an email or call from a potential user saying, I've run out of people who will read my proposal. Will you read it for me?
Okay, that's good.
But maybe Becky or Carolyn have other experiences.
No, from that perspective of writing proposals and being a user, I think it's just a fantastic group of people, and they'll help you as much as they can to be successful. And Perhaps more than reading it, just discussing with you in the development part is the key bit, but I'm sure that there are many willing readers as well.
And I think to answer part of your question, I have never experienced a scientist that I've asked or had an IRP lead ask if they would review something and had them say no either. So.
Scott or me, or anything you'd want to add?
The only additional point I would make is don't wait for like the last 3 or 4 days before a proposal is due to get us to read it. Because that's sort of our busy time. And so we cannot really provide any quality feedback at that point. So the earlier you can reach out to us, the better.
Thanks, Scott. Good point.
Actually, I think that's a great point to segue from, Scott. So one of the things I will tell you that if we have, let's say, a 6-week window to submit proposals, we get 95% of them the last day, which can be stressful for both us and the people writing the proposals. And obviously, if there's any kind of technical challenges that occur, that only exacerbates the problem. So I would really encourage you to build a few days slack into that, if you will, and submit it to try to submit 2-3 days ahead of time at least, but reach out early as well. But yeah, do the submission. Yes, we will accept it up to the very last second, but please try to build yourself some time and take that stress out of your equation if you can.
Any final questions? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got a quick question about the limit scope. So what would be your recommendation? Like, should people reach out and then discuss the scope, or like, I know that's a little bit different from a large scale.
Anyone in particular want to answer? You're about limited scopes. Yeah.
No, I think the same process. I really encourage all the proposers to reach out. Specifically for limited scope, I think that's even more encouraged because the nature of limited scope is a bit different. So as Rick mentioned initially, it's mainly for finishing up an existing project or mainly to develop some preliminary data for the next larger scope project. So, and we usually deal with really limited amount of number of samples and one type of capability only. Yeah, we really encourage proposers to reach out to IRP lead or staff scientist. The good thing with limited scope is there is no due date. So you can start thinking about this from now till sometime in May, I guess, depending on the available budget. Yeah, and sooner you can, reach out, that would be much better.
Thanks. Other questions? Okay, well, I think we could wrap up here. Just want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists who answered questions. Thank you to everybody who attended our workshop and asked great questions. Hope this was useful for users, potential users. We definitely want new users to join EMSL. So please reach out if you have any other questions at any time. I think any one of our panelists would be happy to answer questions later on, or reach out to our user program services team or IRP leads. Thank you. Thank you so much.